Before we start, we want to emphasize that this has heavy spoilers, so if you're not caught up with Jujutsu Kaisen, click away and come back later.
In this world, there are practically no reasons to smile. Ultimate devastation looms around every corner. Those who aren't blessed with the strength to fight pray to gods that won't help them. Those who have the strength often don't have enough, and fall onto a battlefield already bloodied by the comrades they couldn't save. Death opens its doors eagerly thanks to the curses that now walk the earth. What is there to do but pray and die? Hope. In a world where all have resigned to the arms of death, one man dares to hope for life, and that man will stand until the final bell. That man is Yuji Itadori, the first sage of Jujutsu Kaisen. In anime, the sage trope is one of a wise person, typically an older person, that spends their days teaching the new generation about the things he's learned and the way to live life. The best examples that we have of this are people like Master Roshi from Dragon Ball or Jiraiya from Naruto. Lecherous behavior aside, these two are ultimately good figures, striving for a world where their proteges would prosper. However, just like every other aspect of typical anime, Jujutsu Kaisen takes this concept and flips it on its head. There's no concrete mention of a sage yet, apart from Hanami's one-off line to die and become sages, and Yuki's declaration to Kenjaku in their fight where she ultimately lost her life. However, what we can garner from these is that, 1. There is such a concept as a sage, and 2. It must be fundamentally different from curses and sorcerers. A sage in JJK is yet to be seen, but we can develop some ideas on what they can be, and I believe that Yuji will be the first true sage of the series. Part 1. Cursed Birth. Yuji Itadori was cursed from birth. At this point in the story of Jujutsu Kaisen, not much is known about him apart from a few major details. His father's name is Jin, and we don't know his relationship to sorcery or curses. His mother's name was Kaori, and she had an innate technique called anti-gravity system. I mentioned this specific fact because it leads me to believe already that Yuji comes from a sorcerer family, with Jin and Yuji's grandfather, Wasuke, having their own curse technique and sorcerer status. However, there is a third parent. You see, Kaori was actually dead before Yuji was even conceived, and the one panel that we see of her reveals a gruesome fact. Yuji's mother is Kenjaku, the mastermind sorcerer who has existed for over 1,000 years by transplanting his brain into dead corpses. He created the Death Womb paintings, one of which is Choso. However, the difference between Yuji and Choso, or Yuji and practically anybody else for that matter, is that he isn't half cursed. Choso's parentage is his mother, the cursed spirit that impregnated her, and Noritoshi Kamo, who mixes own blood into them. Yuji was born naturally, as we know anyway, but from an unnatural corpse.
Dang, man. I know Jujutsu Kaisen can get twisted, but I never heard of something like this.
Therefore, Yuji's birth is a unique phenomena that I would like to call a cursed birth. Part 2. Yuji's grandfather. For further proof of this, look no further than Wasuke, Yuji's grandfather. Firstly, when Yuji is a child and Wasuke is talking to Jin, he openly states that if he stays with Kaori, he will die. Yes, maybe he could have known Kenjaku's identity, or maybe he genuinely just got a feeling of dread being around Kaori and his paternal instincts kicked in. However, all of what we get from Yuji's grandfather gives me the feeling that there's much more to this interaction than meets the eye. The one interaction that we get of Wasuke and Yuji is Wasuke being adamant on Yuji being active in school and participating in clubs instead of visiting him, wanting him to lead a normal life. Perhaps Wasuke had much more understanding of Yuji's birth circumstances than we may know, and he wanted to shield him from that as long as he possibly could. Additionally, Wasuke's death was the last thing that happened before everything went to hell too. Do Wasuke's sorcery, or perhaps some type of vow he made to his son before his death, protect Yuji until his own last words? I think that Yuji hit all the right notes to become something outside of the conventions of the cursed world. Yuji's grandfather's devotion to his absolute goodness as a model citizen and as someone surrounded by people is further proof that Yuji is something far different than a sorcerer or a curse. Part 3. Yuji and Sukuna. This dynamic is something that can be explored in a video of its own, But for now, I want to look at a few specific points that indicate Yuji's ascent to sagehood. To begin, the role that Yuji is condemned to play in the Jujutsu Kaisen world is being Sukuna's vessel. He begins his education on the world of curses and cursed energy, rapidly ascending as a sorcerer. Yuji's role as Sukuna's vessel, and as a Jujutsu sorcerer, brings more pain than he can ever imagine. In less than a year, all of his comrades began dropping like flies. Fast forward through a few months of emotional torture, and we are at the finale of the Culling Game arc, with Sukuna swiftly transferring himself from Yuji's body to Megumi's body. Instantly, Yuji's role as Sukuna's vessel, the role that he was condemned to die in, has vanished. He no longer has an effective place in Jujutsu society. However, he is still alive, and he is now stronger than ever. He is able to leap literal buildings and tank a barrage of cleaves from Sukuna, moving forward and delivering a sharp blow to the curse's face. Afterwards, during the training arc, Yuji has brand new arms and has been able to learn reverse curse technique in under a month. We get these flashes throughout the story even before this. Being called a demon god by Choso, Kenjaku proclaiming that he had high hopes for Yuji, his ability to almost land Black Flash at will. All of these add to the mystery of each story, and he is more than just Sukuna's vessel. If he was to live and die as Sukuna's vessel, he should have died to Sukuna's cleaves after he took over Megumi's body. After all, the Jujutsu world is merciless. Ego transcends all motivations, and the true strongest sorcerers that we've seen are the ones that cling to their own lives at the cost of everyone else's for the sake of being the ultimate predator. Even with the good characters, this reigns true. Look back to throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the honored one. Every time Yuji experiences the severance of a connection, he becomes stronger. Part 4. Sukuna's Acknowledgement. It's a common joke in Jujutsu Kaisen that Sukuna absolutely loathes Yuji. There are countless examples of this, with Sukuna gleefully showing Yuji the devastation he enacted on Shibuya, attempting to cut him to ribbons after transferring to Megumi's body, and most recently constantly mocking Yuji by repeatedly saying he is uninteresting and a brat. Go on TikTok or Instagram at any point and you'll see plenty of memes with Sukuna acting like a benevolent lord guiding patrons to a glorious death, then turning around and calling Yuji a variety of colorful slurs. Chapter 248, which is the most recent chapter at the point of making this, is more of this, but there's a bit of a difference in the nature of the bullying. Sukuna finally acknowledges Yuji, or more specifically, his ideal. The devotion to defeating him, even though it brings him joy to fight those that are strong, bothers him coming from Yuji. As he says it himself, no matter how many times he goes down, his soul never dies. Yuji himself identifies this, but his descent into the evils of the Jujutsu world have skewed his perspective a bit. His identity and role as a cog, as he describes it, is one of unrelenting pursuance to a larger ideal. No matter what happens, he will keep fighting curses until he physically no longer can. The pessimism attached to this, coming from the death of so many, muddies up the true value of what he is there for. Sure, in a world where curses will forever be there, the need for people to continuously exercise them for generations will be there. That's when you need cogs, and that's why Yuji falls into the ideal of a cog. But what if the ideal was to eliminate curses and cursed energy entirely? Part 5. How to become a sage. The most important part of the human is the soul. Cursed energy comes from your gut, your technique comes from your head. There's an inexplicable connection between cursed energy and the soul, with varying examples showing the connection. For example, when Geto's body responds to Gojo's plea to stop being controlled, Geto exclaims to Mahito that the soul is the body and the body is the soul, both being equal to each other. Another example is Toji overtaking Granny Sorcerer's grandson. When she exclaims that she only copied the body's information to bring Toji back and not the soul's, Toji replies that the grandson's soul must have lost to his body because his body is special. Toji's heavenly restriction completely cuts him off from cursed energy at the expense of an incredibly enhanced physical body, even on par with defeating and overtaking souls. This further shows that the soul has a deep connection to cursed energy. I'm not saying that the body is unimportant to cursed energy. It is confirmed that someone's innate technique is engraved within their body, which is how Kenjaku is able to use Geto's curse manipulation technique. What we can see, however, is that the manifestation of the soul exists even after death. I would like to take it a step further by introducing Yuki Tsukumo's ideal, to live in a world without curses and cursed energy. This is seemingly impossible, as every rule in the world dictates that as long as humans exist, negative emotions will exist. However, this is positing the fact that humans must live in their physical bodies and forms, which we now know is just not true. We have abnormalities like Tengen and Kenjaku, as well as the multitude of reawakened sorcerers who merge their souls into cursed objects to reawaken. What if Yuki, in her research on the soul, figured out a way for humans to exist without the limitations provided by their physical bodies and cursed energy? What if she realized that the dissolution of the physical body was the key to unlocking the next evolution of humans, and that the reliance of negative or cursed energy could be replaced by something greater? This is where I believe Yuji, and by extension whoever's left of the new generation of sorcerers, will come into play. With the almost total decimation of the Jujutsu system as we know it, the world has now come to a boiling point. The rebirth of Yuji Itadori. As we see him right now, despite unbelievable growth as a sorcerer, Yuji still cannot stand with Sukuna as an equal, or even really stand a chance of defeating him. He has already lost multiple comrades in Gojo, Kashimo, and Higuruma, all of who were stated by Sukuna himself to be of the highest caliber of sorcerer. I don't believe that Yuji has the ability to make it out of this fight alive the way that he is right now. I do believe, however, that Yuji's third and final death will be the catalyst for Yuji's soul to ascend to sagehood. I am heavily theorizing at this point. We have already seen that Yuji has done research on the soul from Yuki's book and is able to supposedly swap souls. I believe that this knowledge of the soul and the death of his physical body will allow him to transcend to an even deeper understanding of cursed energy, to a point where he sees the world that Yuki envisioned, where there is no cursed energy, a world that is reliant on positive energy, or blessings. I believe Yuji has been set up so far in the series to bring the world to this point. His importance to the world of Jujutsu is overstated at this point, but it's worth noting that his resilience and devotion to the goal of ridding the world of curses doesn't just come from himself. It comes from multiple powerful figures in the story, and I believe that it started with Wasake's final words. Most curses come out of negative emotion, hatefulness, spite, anger. Even Yuta's words to Rika were more out of desperation and fear than they were out of quote-unquote love. And that's just my personal hot take, but that's a video for another day. I think that Wasake's final words to Yuji were truly full of love and goodness, that he wanted the best for his grandson despite knowing what troubles he was about to go through, and he wanted his final words to be a pillar. This is why Yuji fights for his friends. This is why Yuji is so willing to forego any personal safety or security in battle. While others are fighting to live and be stronger, Yuji is fighting to die and be at peace. How does this culminate into sagehood though? Well, I believe that once Yuji has his third and final death, we will see him truly understand the nature of the soul, the way Gojo understood the nature of RCT at the point of his death. In this understanding, he will be able to fully let go of his physical body, marked with curses, to ascend to a purer form marked by blessings and positive energy. I don't know what powers Yuji will gain as a result of this, but I believe that whatever it is will be enough to have him go toe-to-toe with Sukuna and perhaps even the merger.